Frederick Ward. Most Australians only know him by his bushranger name, Captain Thunderbolt. The school books say he was the gentleman bushranger, that he robbed mail coaches, escaped from Cockatoo Island, and lived a life on the run until he was finally shot down in 1870. But that's just the surface story. The truth is far older, and far more dangerous to the people who run this world. Thunderbolt wasn't just a bushranger. He was one of the last active Tartarian soldiers still fighting in Australia after the Great Reset. After the mud flood buried our cities, and the British Empire moved in to claim what was left, he knew that Ned Kelly's rebellion was coming, and he was on the same mission. They weren't criminals in the way history paints them. They were freedom fighters, warriors trying to hold the line for the last of the Tartarian civilization, and for the Aboriginal custodians who had been allied with Tartaria for generations before the reset. The colonial authorities weren't just chasing Thunderbolt because he stole horses or gold. They were trying to silence him because he remembered the truth. He remembered that Australia was not founded by convicts shipped from England. That whole story was a cover. The British didn't populate this land with petty thieves from London. They took control of a continent already filled with thriving communities, advanced architecture, and free energy systems that the old Tartarians had built. The great sandstone buildings, the strange star fort patterns, the perfect stonework in towns like Sydney and Newcastle, they were already here. The British just moved in, claimed them, and rewrote the story. Thunderbolt knew all of this, and he also knew who was behind it. The same forces who've been rewriting history for centuries. The Freemasons, the Knights Templar, the British Crown, all of them working together to erase Tartaria from memory. They destroyed records, they burned libraries, they demolished old-world buildings that didn't fit their narrative, and hid the rest under the lie of colonial architecture. They slaughtered the Aboriginal population, not just out of greed for land, but to remove witnesses who could speak of the days when Tartarians and Aboriginal nations worked together in trade, defence, and shared knowledge. Frederick Ward had once been a drover, a horseman, a man who could move through the bush like a ghost. But after serving time on Cockatoo Island, one of the colonial prison islands built over Old World foundations, he escaped, not just for freedom's sake, but because he knew time was running out. The British grip was tightening. The Aboriginal resistance was being crushed. The last Tartarian holdouts were either leaving this realm entirely, heading beyond the ice walls, or being hunted down and killed. So Thunderbolt took up the role of the bushranger, not to get rich, but to disrupt the British supply lines. He targeted mail coaches carrying gold, intelligence, and orders from the colonial centres. He armed the dispossessed. He spread word, quietly, to those who still remembered the old ways. Tartaria had not fallen completely. The fight was not over. Every robbery, every escape, every skirmish was part of a bigger plan, to inspire others, to show that the British were not invincible, and to keep the flame alive until a larger rebellion could rise. And he knew Ned Kelly was coming. The two men never officially fought side by side. At least that's what the official story says. But the truth is that Thunderbolt's actions in New South Wales were sending a message south. His raids emboldened others. They proved it was possible to stand against the colonial machine even when outnumbered and outgunned. Ned Kelly's gang would take that spark and turn it into a fire, continuing the Tartarian fight that Thunderbolt had carried in the north. By the late 1860s, the British wanted Thunderbolt gone more than ever. They'd painted him as a criminal in the newspapers, hoping the public would turn against him. But in many rural areas, he was seen as a hero, the man who treated captives with respect, who never killed unnecessarily, who had a strange code of honour that didn't match the image of a ruthless outlaw. That code came from his real allegiance, not to himself, but to Tartaria, to the Aboriginal allies, and to the memory of a free world, before money, before British law, before the reset. His final stand came in 1870 at Kentucky Creek. The official version says he was shot dead by a policeman named Alexander Walker. But there are whispers, even in the dusty corners of colonial records, that the man killed that day was not Thunderbolt at all. Some say he escaped, disappearing into the bush, eventually finding a way to join other Tartarians who had hidden themselves deep inland or crossed the frozen barriers at the edge of our known world. Whether he died that day or not, Thunderbolt's mission lived on. He had planted seeds of resistance that inspired others, including Ned Kelly, to carry on the fight. And more importantly, he had kept the truth alive in whispers and stories, that Australia was not born in chains, that it was once part of a vast, advanced civilization connected to every corner of the flat earth, and that the British Empire was nothing more than an occupying force writing lies into the history books. Frederick Ward was more than a bushranger. He was a soldier of Tartaria, a protector of the Aboriginal allies, a man who saw through the lies of the colonial machine and dared to fight back. And if you strip away the propaganda, if you dig through the mud, both literal and historical, you find the truth. Thunderbolt's war wasn't just against the British in Australia. It was against the entire system that has been enslaving humanity since the reset. And that war is still going.